Another day, another barren rock, complained Xerox as he stared at the viewscreen of the galactic exploration vessel Luminara. His upper tentacles waved dismissively at the blue-green planet rotating below them. 57 surveyed worlds this cycle, and the most exciting thing we have found is a species of carnivorous moss. Commander Vereen clicked her mandibles in annoyance. After 300 cycles leading exploratory missions, her patience for young officers' complaints had worn microscopically thin. Need I remind you, Science Officer Xerox, that barren rocks pay your nutritional stipend? No, Commander, Xerox replied, all four eyes focused intently on his console. Anything to avoid Vereen's infamous glare, rumored to have once caused a Krillian ambassador to molt prematurely. The bridge of the Luminara hummed with the quiet efficiency of the Galactic Confederation's finest survey team. 8 specialists from different species, all experts in their fields, all thoroughly bored after 6 months charting the uncharted. Navigation Officer Plex, a blue-skinned Aquarian with gill slits that fluttered when he was excited, suddenly straightened in his seat. Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's northern hemisphere. Define unusual, Officer Plex, Vereen demanded, her interest piqued, despite years of similar false alarms. Last month, an unusual energy signature turned out to be a particularly energetic lightning storm. Radio waves, Commander. Primitive, but definitely artificial. The pattern suggests communication rather than natural phenomena. And Plex paused, his gill slits flaring widely. There's something else. Energy readings consistent with rudimentary nuclear fission. The bridge fell silent. Nuclear fission meant intelligence, sentient life. First contact potential. Well, Xerox said, his earlier boredom evaporating, perhaps this rock isn't so barren after all. Communications Officer Neri, whose translucent skin revealed the rapid firing of her neural pathways, spoke next. Commander, I have isolated the radio signals. They appear to be, wait, this can't be right. Spit it out, Neri, Vereen ordered. They are in standard galactic English, a human language. Vereen's exoskeleton stiffened. Impossible. This sector is 70 light years from the nearest human colony. There are no registered human settlements in this entire quadrant. Nevertheless, Neri continued, I'm picking up human communications. Military communications, by the sound of it. Security Chief Drax, whose species evolved from apex predators and looked the part with razor teeth and armored scales, growled low in his throat. Humans. Just what we need. Aggressive, unpredictable monkeys with nuclear capabilities. Your xenophobia is showing, Drax, teased Medical Officer Lumi, the smallest crew member whose 6-fingered hands never seemed to stop moving. Some of my best friends at the Academy were human. Friends who probably shot something for fun on weekends, Drax muttered. Enough, Vereen commanded. Regulations are clear. Unregistered settlement of a Confederation species requires immediate investigation. Prepare the landing shuttle. Xerox, Drax, Neri, you are with me. As the chosen crew members gathered their equipment, Drax checked his stun pistol with perhaps more thoroughness than necessary. Just remember, humans shoot first and ask questions later. It's practically their species' motto. Along with, would this taste good deep fried? Added Xerox, securing atmospheric sampling gear to his harness. 90 minutes later, the shuttle broke through the planet's cloud cover. Below them stretched vast forests interrupted by a clearing containing what was unmistakably a human settlement. Crude structures, primitive compared to Confederation standards, but undeniably artificial. No response to our hails, Neri reported, her skin pulsing with anxiety patterns. Take us down at the settlement edge, Vereen ordered the shuttle pilot. Standard first contact protocols. Non-threatening posture, translator broadcasts on all frequencies. The shuttle descended smoothly into a meadow bordering the settlement. Through the viewports, they could see figures moving among the buildings, stopping to point upward at the approaching craft. They don't seem to be running in panic, observed Xerox hopefully. That's promising. Drax snorted. Give them time. As the shuttle touched down, Vereen activated the external speakers. This is Commander Vareen of the Galactic Confederation exploration vessel Luminara. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations. The response came not in words but in a sudden flurry of activity. Saviors rushed from the buildings, forming a perimeter around the shuttle. Even to alien eyes, the metallic objects in their hands were unmistakable. Weapons, Drax said unnecessarily. Told you so. The shuttle's sensors picked up a transmission from the surface. A gruff human voice crackled through the speakers. Unidentified craft, you have entered restricted airspace. Power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Any hostile action will be met with lethal force. Vareen's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of a human sigh. Seems our reputation precedes us, though I can't imagine how. What now, Commander? Neri asked, her skin nearly transparent with stress. Now? Vareen replied, watching as more armed humans surrounded their shuttle. Now we discover why a human colony 70 light-years from home is preparing for war. Outside, the circle of weapons tightened around them, and the first contact that should have been a historic moment of peaceful diplomacy descended into a standoff that threatened to become the shortest, and possibly last, in the diplomatic mission of Commander Vareen's career. Xerox paced the cramped confines of the detention quarters where the humans had placed the landing party. 3 standard hours had passed since armed guards escorted them from the shuttle, confiscated their equipment, and locked them in this windowless room with nothing but uncomfortable metal benches and the constant buzz of surveillance devices. Stop moving, Xerox. You are making me dizzy, Commander Vareen snapped, her normally composed demeanor fraying at the edges. Xerox's tentacles curled inward, a gesture of embarrassment among his species, but his mind continued racing. This wasn't how his career was supposed to unfold. Born on Tentacula Prime, the youngest offspring of 2 renowned xenobiologists, Xerox had joined the Galactic Confederation with dreams of discovering new life forms, becoming a prisoner of a species that shouldn't even be here. I apologize, Commander, he said, forcing himself to settle on a bench. I'm struggling to reconcile our situation with standard protocols. Drax, checking the room for the 5th time for possible escape routes, scoffed. Protocol became irrelevant the moment those humans pointed primitive projectile weapons at us. We should have left orbit immediately. Xerox's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of disagreement. That would violate Section 7 of the Exploration Mandate. Unexpected encounters with displaced Confederation species require thorough investigation to ensure their welfare and compliance with galactic law. I'm aware of the regulations, Science Officer, Vareen said. I helped write them. But regulations rarely account for being detained at gunpoint. Neri, who had been unnervingly quiet since their capture, finally spoke. What puzzles me is how humans got here at all. The nearest colony is Proxima Station. Even with their fastest ships, it would take generations to reach this sector. That was the question gnawing at Xerox as well. His specialization in lost colonies during his advanced studies at the Academy made this situation particularly fascinating. Throughout galactic history, colonies occasionally vanished, victims of natural disasters, resource depletion, or conflict. But finding one that had relocated so far from known space? Unprecedented. Commander, Xerox began carefully. When the humans return, I request permission to act as primary contact. Vareen's mandibles clicked rapidly in surprise. You? No offense, Xerox, but your diplomatic experience is limited to arguing with research committees. True, Xerox acknowledged, but I have studied human history extensively. Did you know I spent an entire research cycle on Earth? My dissertation on human expansion patterns and territorial defense mechanisms won the Galactic Scientific Achievement Award. Fascinating, Drax deadpanned. Did your dissertation mention their tendency to imprison peaceful explorers? Xerox ignored the jab. Commander, these humans are clearly isolated and defensive. My hypothesis is they are a lost colony, possibly from the expansion-era mishaps 3 centuries ago. Several generation ships went missing then. Vareen considered this. Proceed with your theory. Their technology appears stagnated at pre-Confederation levels. Yet they have survived, even thrived. Something drove them to militarize. Not just against potential threats, they were ready for us specifically. Xerox's tentacles quivered with excitement. This is an unprecedented opportunity to study how human societies evolve in isolation. Our priority is extraction, not anthropological research, Vareen reminded him. Of course, Xerox agreed quickly. But understanding their situation might be our best path to freedom. The door slid open, revealing 2 armed humans. "The general will see you now," announced one, gesturing with his weapon. "All of us?" asked Vareen. "Just one," the guard replied, eyes scanning the aliens before pointing at Xerox, the tentacle guy. "Rest of you stay put." Vareen rose slightly. "As commander, I should." "Commander," Xerox interrupted, unusual for his typically deferential nature. Protocol 15B permits specialized officers to take lead in situations matching their expertise. His upper tentacles formed the subtle pattern that in his culture meant "trust me." After a moment of tense silence, Vareen nodded once. "Very well, Science Officer Xerox. You have provisional authority to represent the Confederation. Remember your training." As Xerox moved toward the door, Drax growled quietly, "And remember, they shoot things for fun." Walking between the human guards, Xerox felt a complex mixture of emotions: fear at the potential danger, excitement at the scientific opportunity, and a nagging sense that regulations wouldn't be enough to navigate what lay ahead. For the first time in his career, he would need to trust his instincts over protocol. This, he realized, was exactly why he'd joined the Exploration Corps in the first place. And not for the safety of regulations, but for the exhilarating uncertainty of the unknown. "You are doing what?" Commander Vareen's mandibles clacked so violently that Xerox feared she might crack her exoskeleton. 3 days had passed since their initial detention. Following Xerox's surprisingly productive meeting with the human settlement's leader, General Augusta Parker, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair and a scar running from temple to jaw, the alien crew had been granted restricted movement within the settlement. Not freedom, exactly, but an improvement over captivity. "I'm conducting field research," Xerox replied, adjusting the crude camouflage poncho he'd fashioned from local materials. "The humans have their perimeter surveillance focused outward. Their internal security is lacking." Drax, who'd been quietly listening, actually chuckled. "Never thought I'd say this, but I'm impressed, Tentacle Boy. Didn't think you had the spine segments for espionage." "It's not espionage," Xerox insisted, all 4 eyes blinking rapidly in agitation. "It's unauthorized observational research, which regulations specifically forbid," Vareen pointed out. "Technically," Xerox countered, Regulation 34C permits independent research initiatives during first contact scenarios when they might yield critical information for peaceful resolution." He paused. "Provided they don't violate local laws or customs." "And sneaking around their military base doesn't violate local customs?" Neri asked, her translucent skin showing concerned patterns. "Only if I'm caught," Xerox replied with unexpected confidence. "Which I won't be. My species evolved as ambush predators, remember? Before we developed higher cognition, my ancestors spent millennia hiding in kelp forests to surprise their prey." "That was millions of years ago," Vareen reminded him. "You grew up in a metropolitan apartment complex." "Nevertheless, the instincts remain," Xerox said, sounding more confident than he felt. "Something isn't right here, Commander." In my meeting with General Parker, she referred to them repeatedly. "Not us, some other threat. These humans aren't preparing for an alien invasion. They are already at war with someone else." This silenced the room. Finally, Vareen spoke. "You have 4 hours. If you are not back, we are informing the humans of your little research project." "Clear." "Crystal clear, Commander," Xerox replied, using a human expression he'd picked up during his Earth studies. The forest surrounding the human settlement teemed with life, insects buzzing, nocturnal creatures rustling through underbrush, trees swaying in the gentle evening breeze. Xerox moved among them, his naturally mottled skin blending with the shadows between moonlight patches. His makeshift observations over the past days had yielded a rough understanding of the patrol schedules. Every 42 minutes, a two-person team walked the settlement perimeter. Between rotations, he had a 6-minute window to cross the cleared area surrounding the compound without detection. Timing his movement carefully, Xerox scuttled across the open ground and pressed himself against the wall of what humans called a warehouse, a large storage structure at the settlement's edge. He'd chosen this building after noticing the heavy vehicle traffic entering and exiting throughout the day. A ventilation duct, mercifully large enough to accommodate his flexible form, provided entry. Inside, Xerox navigated through dark metal passages until he found an observation grate overlooking the main floor. What he saw below froze all four of his hearts simultaneously. The warehouse housed row upon row of mechanical exoskeletons, combat suits designed to enhance human strength and protection. Workers swarmed around the machines, performing maintenance, loading weapons systems, checking hydraulic components. Further back, tanks and artillery pieces were being prepared, their cannons gleaming under harsh industrial lighting. Final stress tests complete on Battalion 3, called a technician, all 30 units combat ready. "Good," replied a supervisor, checking something on a transparent tablet. "Load them on transports by 0600. Northern perimeter reported movement again last night." Xerox's scientific mind cataloged everything he observed. But this wasn't a defensive posture. The humans were preparing for offensive operations. But against what? The Confederation maintained no other presence in this sector. Moving carefully through the ventilation system, he followed the ductwork to another section of the warehouse. Here, display screens showed maps of the surrounding territory. Red markers clustered in mountainous regions to the north. Notes attached to the display referenced confirmed hive locations and breach attempts. A chill ran through Xerox's neural pathways. Hives? Could it be? A sudden bang directly beneath him interrupted his thoughts. The ventilation grate he'd been observing through had loosened from his weight, one corner now hanging precariously. "Hey, what was that?" called a human voice. "Probably those damn tree squirrels again," another replied. "They get into everything. Check it anyway." General's orders: investigate all anomalies. Footsteps approached as Xerox frantically backpedaled through the duct. The loose grate chose that moment to give way completely, clattering to the floor with a sound that seemed as loud as a spaceship launch. "What the? That's no squirrel damage." Xerox abandoned stealth for speed, scrambling through the ventilation system as shouts echoed behind him. An alarm began to wail, 3 short bursts repeated, signaling a security breach. Reaching an exterior vent, he pushed against the metal grid with all 4 arms. It refused to budge. Designed to keep things out, not in. Panic threatened to overwhelm his logical faculties. Think, he muttered to himself. Remembering his equipment, he pulled out a small analysis tool he'd concealed in his body pouch, the one item the humans had overlooked when confiscating their technology. Its tiny laser, designed for geological sampling, might just be strong enough. The sound of humans entering the ventilation system behind him added urgency to his work. The laser cut slowly through the vent's mounting brackets, each second stretching into apparent infinity. "I have got movement on thermal, 20 meters ahead in the ductwork," called a voice behind him. With a final desperate push, the vent cover broke free. Xerox squeezed through the opening, dropping 5 meters to the ground below. Pain shot through his landing limbs, but adrenaline equivalents in his system pushed him forward. Searchlights swept the compound as he dashed for the tree line, alarms now blaring continuously. A projectile whizzed past his head, then another. Humans shouted, dogs barked, but the darkness and underbrush became Xerox's allies as he disappeared into the forest's protective embrace. Only when he'd put considerable distance between himself and the settlement did he pause to assess. He was injured but functional, pursued but temporarily hidden, and most importantly alive with vital information. Whatever threat these humans were facing, it wasn't the Confederation. And if his suspicions were correct, Both humans and aliens might soon have much bigger problems than their awkward first contact. "You should be court-martialed," Commander Vereen stated flatly as she applied healing gel to the laceration on Xerox's lower appendage. "Insubordination, unauthorized reconnaissance, compromising our already precarious diplomatic position." "With respect, Commander," Xerox replied, wincing as the gel seeped into his wound, "the information I obtained justifies the risk." They were gathered in their assigned quarters, more comfortable than detention cells but still under guard. But dawn was breaking outside, painting the room with pale golden light. Xerox had barely made it back before his 4-hour deadline expired. "Then enlighten us," Drax said, arms crossed skeptically. "What could possibly be worth nearly getting yourself killed and potentially starting an interspecies incident?" "The humans are at war," Xerox said simply. "Not with us, not with each other, with something else. Something that terrifies them." He described what he'd seen: the combat mechs, the artillery, the maps marking hive locations. The others listened with increasing concern. "That doesn't explain how humans got here in the first place," Neri pointed out. "They are 70 light-years from any registered colony." Xerox's upper tentacles twitched excitedly. "Actually, I have a theory about that too. Commander, I'd like permission to access the Luminara's historical database from our portable terminal." Vereen considered for a moment. "The humans permitted us to keep the terminal for cultural exchange purposes. But I suppose historical research falls under that umbrella." "Proceed." Xerox's fingers flew across the holographic interface, pulling up archives from the Confederation's extensive historical records. 327 years ago, he began, Earth launched a series of generation ships, massive vessels designed to transport colonists to distant star systems over centuries. Most reached their destinations and established successful colonies that eventually joined the Confederation. Basic history. Drax growled impatiently. "To get to the point." "But 3 ships were lost," Xerox continued, undeterred. "The Pathfinder, the Horizon, and the Artemis. Despite extensive searches, they were never found. The prevailing theory was navigation system failures caused them to exit hyperspace in uncharted regions where they subsequently perished." He pulled up an image of a massive cylindrical spacecraft, its hull emblazoned with the name Artemis and an Earth flag. The Artemis carried 5,000 colonists bound for the Tau Ceti system. It disappeared from tracking systems during a routine course correction. Until now, its fate remained one of space exploration's great mysteries. "You believe this settlement is the Artemis colony?" Vereen asked, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "I need to confirm, but yes, the timing fits. The technology level is consistent with what would have been available to them, and..." Xerox tapped more commands, bringing up navigational charts. "If the Artemis suffered a catastrophic navigation error during its 3rd hyperspace jump, this system falls within the possible drift radius." Neri's skin rippled with realization patterns. 300 years they have been stranded here for 3 centuries, thinking they were alone in the universe. "Not entirely alone, it seems," Drax noted grimly. Xerox nodded, continuing to search through archived records. "The Artemis mission logs might tell us more, but they are fragmentary. Wait, here's something." He projected a recovered audio file. A human voice, distorted by static, filled the room. "Emergency log, Captain Eleanor Frost, Generation Ship Artemis, Day 47 post-incident. Hyperspace drive beyond repair. Conventional engines functional. We have located a potentially habitable planet in nearby system. Estimated arrival using sublightal. 83 years. Returning to Earth impossible. God help us, we are on our own." Silence fell over the room as the recording ended. "They made it," Xerox said softly. "Against all odds, they reached this planet and established a colony. But something went wrong." Diving deeper into the archives, Xerox searched for any record of hostile species in this sector. The database returned only fragmentary references to exploratory missions that had gone silent over the centuries. Then a pattern caught his attention. Sector 47 Gamma, Sector 39 Delta, Sector 26 Alpha, all had exploration missions disappear. All lie in a rough line pointing directly to this system. Marine's exoskeleton stiffened. You think whatever the humans are fighting has been expanding through this region of space? And the Confederation never noticed because it was happening in uncharted territory, Xerox concluded. We have inadvertently stumbled onto the front line of a war that's been raging for who knows how long. Pulling up settlement records from their initial scan of the planet, Xerox noted something else. The human colony is concentrated in this southern region. No settlements in the northern hemisphere at all, despite suitable terrain. They have established a defensive line along this mountain range. Holding the line, Drax murmured, professional respect creeping into his voice. 300 years, cut off from their homeworld, facing an unknown enemy, and they are still fighting. That explains their reaction to our arrival, Neri said. They must have thought we were their enemy. Xerox closed the database and turned to face his comrades. The humans aren't just preparing for war, Commander. They have been fighting one for generations. They are defending not just their colony, but potentially this entire sector of space, including Confederation territories, from an enemy we have never encountered. And we just landed in the middle of their battlefield, Vareen said grimly. The question now is, what do we do about it? Before anyone could answer, the door slid open. General Parker stood in the doorway, her face a mask of contained fury. We need to talk, she said, eyes locked on Xerox, about your little nighttime adventure, and about what's coming for all of us. You want to do what? General Parker's voice reverberated off the walls of the command center, causing several junior officers to flinch at their stations. Negotiate? With the swarm? Have those tentacles finally strangled your brain? Xerox stood his ground, which wasn't easy when facing a human who'd spent 3 decades fighting an interspecies war. 5 days had passed since his nighttime excursion and subsequent confrontation with the general. After an initial dressing down that would have made Commander Vareen proud, Parker had grudgingly recognized the value of having Confederation allies and granted the alien team limited access to the colony's records. What they discovered chilled even Drax's predatory blood. The swarm, as humans called them, had appeared 27 years after the colony's establishment. Insectoid creatures with hive mind characteristics, they attacked without warning or apparent provocation. Initial encounters suggested intelligence but not technology. They fought with biological weapons, acid, and overwhelming numbers. But they learned. They adapted. They evolved. With each passing decade, swarm tactics grew more sophisticated. They began using captured human technology. Worse, they began breeding specialized warriors seemingly designed to counter specific human defenses. The war had reached a stalemate, with humans holding their defensive line through increasingly desperate measures. General Parker, Xerox said carefully, in 3 centuries of Confederation history, we have encountered 73 distinct sentient species. 68 of those first contacts resulted in peaceful relations. Of the 5 that didn't, 4 were eventually resolved through diplomacy. And the 5th? Parker asked, arms crossed. An unfortunate misunderstanding involving a Bortelian mating ritual and a Vraxian funeral ceremony, Vareen interjected. Let's just say tentacles were in places they shouldn't have been. Parker wasn't amused. These aren't misunderstood aliens with cultural differences. They are monsters that have been trying to exterminate us for generations. Perhaps, Xerox conceded. But consider this, they have had 273 years to do so, yet you are still here. If their goal was simple extermination, their evolutionary advantages should have overwhelmed you long ago. Lieutenant Jaina Reeves, Parker's second-in-command and chief tactical officer, spoke up from where she'd been quietly observing. He's got a point, General. The swarm could have overrun us multiple times, especially during the famine years. Instead, they have maintained a consistent pressure, almost like they are containing us rather than eliminating us. Or testing us, added Dr. Morley, the colony's chief scientist, a man whose wire-rimmed glasses and rumpled appearance belied his brilliant mind. Each engagement yields new information about our capabilities, which they then adapt to. Parker's expression remained skeptical, but Xerox sensed the first hairline cracks in her resolve. What exactly are you proposing? A joint diplomatic mission, Xerox explained, activating a holographic display showing a mountain valley 15 kilometers north of the human defensive line. Our scans detected a smaller swarm outpost here, separated from their main concentration. We approach under flag of truce. A human concept, I believe, would be recognized by any species that's been observing you. And when they ignore your white flag and melt your face off, Parker asked dryly. That's why we are not sending just anyone, Commander Vereen interjected. We have selected a specific team with unique capabilities. The holographic display shifted to show personnel files. Xerox's image appeared first. Science Officer Xerox, Vereen explained, expert in xenobiology and cultural analysis. If anyone can spot behavioral patterns or communication attempts, it's him. Next came Neri's image. Communications Officer Neri, but her species evolved from swarm insects themselves. She might recognize patterns imperceptible to others. Third was a human face, Dr. Morley. Your chief scientist has studied swarm specimens for 40 years. His knowledge is invaluable. The fourth image surprised everyone. Lieutenant Reeves, Vereen continued, combat experience against the swarm, but her personnel file shows 17 instances of unconventional problem solving. She thinks differently, a valuable trait for first contact. And you need my approval because… General, Parker prompted. Because we need two more things, Xerox said. First, a ceasefire along the sector where we will make contact. Second, this. The hologram shifted to show technical schematics for a device Xerox and Dr. Morley had designed over sleepless nights, a universal translator specifically calibrated for non-verbal species. It analyzes movement patterns, pheromone releases, and sensory emissions to construct communication models. Fascinating, Parker said, not sounding fascinated at all. And if it doesn't work? Then we have this, Lieutenant Reeves said, pulling out a small metallic sphere, a prototype sonic disruptor. Painful to swarm nervous systems, but non-lethal. It gives us a fighting chance to retreat. Parker stared at the sphere. You have been busy, Lieutenant. Permission to speak freely, General? Reeves asked. At Parker's nod, she continued, we have been fighting this war for 10 generations. My great-great-grandmother died holding the line. My father, too. I have got 17 swarm kills to my name. And I will fight till my dying breath if that's what it takes. But if there's even a 1% chance we could end this without more graves, don't we owe it to everyone who's died to try? Silence fell over the command center. Parker's weathered face revealed nothing, but her eyes, those sharp eyes that had seen too much death, flickered with something Xerox hadn't observed before. Hope, perhaps, or its fragile beginnings. You have 48 hours to prepare, she finally said. I will authorize the ceasefire for a 12-hour window. One sign of treachery, and I'm ordering an artillery strike on the entire contact zone. Clear? Crystal clear, General, Xerox replied, his tentacles forming the subtle pattern that in his culture signified respect and gratitude. As the impromptu diplomatic team dispersed to make preparations, Drax pulled Xerox aside. I still think this is suicide, the security chief growled quietly. Probably, Xerox agreed cheerfully. But just think of the research paper I could write if we survive. Dawn broke over the mountain range that had served as humanity's defensive line for nearly 3 centuries. The pale light illuminated a small convoy, one human all-terrain vehicle, and the alien shuttle moving slowly toward no man's land. Inside the lead vehicle, Lieutenant Jaina Reeves gripped the steering controls with white knuckles. Final checkpoint clear, she announced over the comm. We are now officially in disputed territory. May whatever gods exist have mercy on our collective stupidity. Your encouragement is truly inspiring, Lieutenant, Dr. Morley replied from the passenger seat, adjusting his glasses nervously. The aging scientist had rarely ventured beyond the settlement's protective walls, much less into swarm territory. Behind them, the alien shuttle hummed quietly, repurposed from exploration to diplomacy. Inside, Xerox ran final diagnostics on their translation device while Neri monitored communication channels for any sign of swarm activity. Picking up unusual electromagnetic patterns, Neri reported, her translucent skin pulsing with anxiety. It could be swarm communication, could be geological interference. Hard to distinguish. Record everything, Commander Vereen ordered from the Luminara in orbit. Even if the diplomatic mission fails, the data gathered will be invaluable. Your confidence is as inspiring as the lieutenant's, Xerox muttered, 4 eyes focused on his equipment. The Universal Translator, cobbled together from Confederation technology and human insights, represented the most sophisticated communication attempt with the swarm in human history. Whether it would function as designed remained to be seen. Movement ahead, Reeves called over the comm. 3 o'clock, ridgeline. All eyes turned to see dark shapes skittering along the rocky outcropping, their movements unnervingly fluid. The swarm had noticed their approach. Maintain course and speed, Xerox instructed, fighting his own instinct to flee. No sudden movements or course changes. Easy for you to say, Reeves replied. You are in an armored shuttle. We are in what amounts to a fancy jeep. The convoy continued toward the designated contact point, a flat plateau nestled between 2 mountain spurs. According to human intelligence, this area contained a smaller swarm outpost, potentially more manageable for first contact than their main hive concentrations further north. We are approaching the white flag position, Dr. Morley announced. Should be visible to any observers. Reeves brought the vehicle to a stop. Following the plan, she emerged slowly, hands clearly visible, and planted a tall pole with white fabric, the universal human symbol for truce. The motion felt absurdly inadequate against centuries of brutal warfare. Back in the shuttle, Xerox activated external speakers. Initiate Phase 1. A series of simple mathematical sequences began broadcasting prime numbers, the value of pi, basic geometric ratios. If the swarm possessed any form of intelligence, these patterns would register as clearly artificial and intentional. For 20 excruciating minutes, nothing happened. The swarm observers remained visible on distant ridgelines but made no approach. Inside the human vehicle, Reeves kept one hand near her sidearm while Dr. Morley fiddled with sensor equipment. This isn't working, Reeves finally said. They are just watching us. Patience, Lieutenant, Xerox replied. First contact protocols suggest. Scratch that, Reeves interrupted sharply. We have got movement. Multiple contacts emerging from the eastern ravine. What approached could only be described as a nightmare given physical form. 6 swarm creatures, each the size of a small earth horse, scuttled across the rocky terrain on multiple jointed limbs. Their carapaces gleamed iridescent black under the morning sun, and compound eyes reflected the light like fractured gemstones. Most disturbing were the specialized appendages, some ending in what appeared to be tools rather than natural formations. They are carrying objects, Dr. Morley observed, his scientific curiosity temporarily overriding fear. Look at the one in front, that's a modified human plasma cutter. Wonderful, Reeves muttered. They are accessorizing. The swarm creatures stopped 30 meters from the human vehicle, arranging themselves in a semicircle. The central figure, larger than the others with distinctive red markings across its carapace, stepped forward. Translator active, Xerox announced, his tentacles working controls with practiced precision. Beginning Phase 2. The translator projected a holographic interface between the two groups, simple shapes and colors designed to establish basic communication concepts. Simultaneously, it began analyzing the swarm creatures' movements, looking for patterns that might indicate responsive intelligence. The lead swarm creature remained motionless for several moments, compound eyes fixed on the holographic display. Then, with startling deliberation, it raised an appendage and emitted a series of clicks and whistles. Movement pattern recognized, Neri reported excitedly. definite response to the stimulus. The translator processed the input, attempting to establish rudimentary communication. The holographic display shifted to show a simple representation of their two species, with a neutral space between them. The swarm leader stepped closer, its movements now deliberate and measured. It extended an appendage toward the hologram, then made a sweeping gesture across it. "What does that mean?" Reeves asked tensely. "Unclear," Xerox replied. "Could be rejection, could be modification. The translator needs more input too." Suddenly, the swarm leader emitted a high-pitched keening sound. The others immediately responded, moving with military precision to form a new formation. "That's a battle stance," Reeves warned, hand moving to her weapon. "I have seen it before, right before an attack." "Wait," Dr. Morley called. "Look at the hologram." The translator's display had shifted in response to the swarm's movements. It now showed a third party represented by amorphous shapes positioned beyond both human and swarm territory. "They are trying to tell us something," Xerox realized. "Something about another group." The swarm leader chittered rapidly, its appendages moving in complex patterns that the translator struggled to interpret. Fragments appeared in the holographic display: danger, territory, expansion, threat. "I think they are warning us," Neary suggested. "Or threatening us. The contextual markers are ambiguous." Reeves frowned. "If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead already." "This feels different." The lead swarm creature suddenly produced something from a pouch-like organ, a metallic object that glinted in the sunlight. It placed the object on the ground and backed away. "Is that?" Dr. Morley squinted through his glasses. "A human data drive," Reeves confirmed, shock evident in her voice. "Military grade, at least 50 years old." "This changes protocol," Xerox said. "Lieutenant, with extreme caution, can you retrieve it?" Reeves hesitated. "That's not in our mission parameters." "Neither is the swarm attempting direct information exchange," Xerox countered. "We need to adapt." After a moment's consideration, Reeves slowly exited the vehicle. Every step toward the object felt like walking through molasses, her combat instincts screaming warnings with each movement. The swarm creatures watched with unnerving stillness, compound eyes tracking her progress. But when she reached the data drive, she slowly bent to retrieve it. As her fingers closed around the object, the lead swarm creature suddenly lurched forward, emitting a series of rapid clicks. Reeves reacted instinctively, drawing her sidearm and aiming it at the creature. "Don't move," she shouted, backing away rapidly. The swarm responded immediately, carapaces flaring, appendages extending into offensive positions. The leader emitted a high-pitched shriek that sent shivers down everyone's spine. Translation failing, Neary reported frantically. Pattern coherence lost. Inside the shuttle, Xerox watched in horror as the carefully orchestrated first contact deteriorated into a standoff. "Lieutenant, holster your weapon. We are losing them." "Tell that to this nightmare who just lunged at me," Reeves shouted back, continuing her retreat. The swarm began advancing slowly, their movements now synchronizing in what all humans recognized as attack preparation. The universal translator projected frantically changing symbols, attempting to re-establish communication, but the moment had shattered. "Shuttle, we need extraction," Reeves called, backing toward the vehicle where Dr. Morley was already starting the engine. Diplomatic mission compromised. As the tension reached breaking point, a deafening roar split the air. All eyes, human, alien, and swarm, turned skyward as a massive shadow fell across the plateau. The shadow that fell across the plateau belonged to a spacecraft, but not of Confederation design. Its hull was midnight black, with pulsing violet energy patterns tracing incomprehensible symbols across its surface. The vessel hovered silently, at least twice the size of the Luminara, its presence radiating malevolence. "What the hell is that?" Reeves breathed, her weapon now forgotten at her side. The response came from the most unexpected source. The lead swarm creature emitted a series of clicks and whistles that the translator, remarkably, interpreted into a single word: harvesters. Before anyone could process this development, energy weapons erupted from the vessel's underside. Brilliant purple beams sliced through the air, carving smoking trenches in the earth dangerously close to both the human vehicle and the swarm delegation. Defensive positions, Reeves shouted, diving behind their vehicle as Dr. Morley scrambled for cover. The swarm scattered with surprising coordination, their movements no longer threatening but defensive. Two smaller creatures were caught in a beam, their carapaces blackening instantly before they collapsed into smoldering heaps. "Shuttle, get airborne," Xerox commanded, frantically working the translator. "We need to evac the humans." As the alien shuttle lifted off, more beams lanced downward. One struck perilously close to Reeves and Morley, showering them with superheated rock fragments. The lead swarm creature suddenly scuttled toward them, multiple limbs moving in perfect synchronization. Reeves raised her weapon instinctively, but the creature made no aggressive move. Instead, it positioned itself between the humans and the hostile craft, its carapace expanding to create a makeshift shield. "It's protecting us," Dr. Morley said incredulously. The swarm leader chittered rapidly, extending an appendage toward their vehicle. The meaning was unmistakable even without translation. "Get in. Drive. Now." Reeves didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed Morley and they scrambled into their vehicle. The engine roared to life as the mysterious spacecraft began descending, more weapons ports opening along its hull. "Follow." The swarm leader's translated voice crackled through the comm system. The creature then led the way, moving with astonishing speed toward a narrow ravine to the east. Overhead, the alien shuttle swooped in, interposing itself between the attacking vessel and the fleeing ground party. The Luminara's shuttle wasn't armed, but its defensive shields designed to withstand meteorite impacts and radiation absorbed the first volley of energy beams. "We can't maintain this position long," Neary reported, her translucent skin nearly white with stress. "Shields at 60% and falling." "Just buy them enough time to reach cover," Vereen ordered from orbit. "Then retreat to minimum safe distance." The human vehicle bounced violently over the rough terrain, following the swarm leader's path into the ravine. Behind them, three more swarm creatures formed a rear guard, surprisingly coordinated with the humans' retreat. Commander Xerox called to Vereen, "We need the Luminara's sensors on that vessel. All spectrum analysis." Minutes later, they had reached a cave entrance concealed by overhanging rock formations. The swarm leader gestured them inside, where the remaining creatures were already arranging themselves in defensive positions. The shuttle landed nearby, Xerox and Neary quickly disembarking to join the humans. Inside the cave, they found something unexpected: a swarm command post. Biological components meshed with salvaged human technology in a disturbing yet impressive hybrid of the two species' engineering. "They have been watching us," Dr. Morley realized, examining the displays showing human settlement activity. "For years." "Not watching," the swarm leader's translated voice corrected. "Protecting." The translator was functioning better now, apparently having gathered enough data during the crisis to establish more coherent communication. The swarm leader, who identified itself as Guardian of Boundaries, manipulated controls on what appeared to be a biological computer interface. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the attacking vessel now hovering over the contact site they'd abandoned. Smaller craft were deploying from its hull. "Harvesters," Guardian of Boundaries explained. "They take, consume, absorb." The translator struggled with complex concepts but conveyed the essential meaning. "First came to our world. We fled. Found here. They followed." "Wait," Reeves interrupted, holstering her weapon completely. "You are refugees too?" The swarm leader's compound eyes seemed to study her. "Yes, like humans. Lost. Separated from greater hive. Surviving." The Xerox tentacles quivered with excitement as the pieces fell into place. "That's why you have been fighting the humans without overwhelming them. You weren't trying to conquer, you were creating a buffer zone, using humans as a shield while you established your colony." "Not shield," Guardian of Boundaries corrected. "Barrier. Humans fight well. Strong, adaptable. We stay back. Let humans hold line against harvesters who follow. Dr. Morley leaned forward, his scientific curiosity fully engaged. You have been manipulating us? Attacking just enough to keep us militarized and alert, but never enough to destroy us. We die together or survive together, the swarm leader responded. No choice. On the display, the harvester vessel began deploying more small craft, creating a search pattern over the mountains. What do they want? Reeves asked. The guardian of boundaries manipulated the interface again. The display shifted to show horrifying images, planets with surfaces stripped to bedrock, entire ecosystems reduced to barren wastelands. But they consume. All life, all resources. Move on. Cannot be reasoned with. Cannot be stopped alone. That's why you gave us the data drive, Reeves realized. What's on it? The swarm leader's appendages moved in what might have been the equivalent of a shrug. Human data. Your ancestors encountered harvesters before reaching this world. Recorded. We found in wreckage. Could not decode. Dr. Morley was already connecting the drive to his tablet. It's heavily encrypted military data. Might take time to wait. It's accepting my clearance. Opening now. Now, the screen displayed a video log. A woman in a captain's uniform appeared, her face haggard with exhaustion. Final log, Captain Eleanor Frost, Generation Ship Artemis. The vessel that attacked us has followed through hyperspace. We have lost engines 2 through 5 and life support is failing on decks 7 through 12. We have located a planetary system nearby and are changing course. I pray these beings don't follow us to ground. If anyone finds this record, beware. They are out there, and they are hunting. The recording ended, leaving stunned silence in the cave. All this time, Reeves whispered, we thought we were fighting you. But you were fighting them, just like us. Different methods. Guardian of Boundaries replied. Same enemy. Xerox looked between the ancient enemies, now united by a common threat. The harvesters have found you both. And now they have found the Confederation too. The journey back to the human settlement resembled the worst family road trip imaginable if your family included tentacled aliens, insectoid hive creatures, and humans with centuries of genocidal baggage between them. The Luminara's shuttle took point, scanning for harvester activity, while the ground vehicles followed a circuitous route through ravines and forests to avoid detection. General Parker is going to love this, Lieutenant Reeves muttered, glancing at the swarm leader crammed uncomfortably in the vehicle's rear compartment. 300 years of kill-on-sight policy, and I'm playing taxi service. Your sarcasm patterns indicate discomfort rather than hostility, Guardian of Boundaries observed through the translator. This is encouraging. Don't analyze me, Bug, Reeves replied, though without real venom. We are a long way from friendship bracelets. Dr. Morley, monitoring communications from the passenger seat, suddenly sat up straighter. We have got a problem. General Parker's mobilizing defensive batteries. They have detected the harvester ship on long-range scanners. And us? Xerox asked from the shuttle overhead. That's the problem. We are approaching from the same vector as the harvester scouts. With Guardian of Boundaries aboard, we are going to register as a swarm attack force. Reeves swore colorfully, using terms that the translator wisely chose not to interpret for the swarm leader. Open a channel to command. Priority Alpha. Getting through to Parker proved challenging. When they finally established communication, her response was predictably explosive. You did what? The general's voice blasted through the comm with enough force to make the speaker crackle. Lieutenant, have you lost your mind? You are bringing one of those things directly to our doorstep? With respect, General, the situation has changed, Reeves replied, outlining their discovery about the harvesters and the swarm's true role. Inconvenient story, Parker responded skeptically. And I'm supposed to believe centuries of war were just a misunderstanding? Not misunderstanding, Guardian of Boundaries interjected, the translator rendering its clicks and whistles into slightly mechanical English. Strategic necessity. Humans fight well when threatened. An excellent barrier against harvesters. Not helping your case there, buddy, Reeves muttered to the swarm leader. Xerox joined the conversation from the shuttle. General Parker, the Confederation has encountered similar reports from other sectors: unexplained planetary extinctions, missing exploration teams. We dismissed them as anomalies, but seen together with your evidence, they form a pattern. Commander Vereen has analyzed the harvester vessel, Neary added. Its technology exceeds even Confederation capabilities. None of us can face this threat alone. A long silence followed. Finally, Parker spoke, her voice tight with contained emotion. Lieutenant Reeves, proceed to Checkpoint Delta. I will meet you there with a security team. Any aggressive move from our guest will be met with extreme prejudice. Understood, General? As they approached the designated meeting point, a reinforced outpost several kilometers from the main settlement, Reeves noticed their swarm passenger becoming agitated, its carapace plates flexing and contracting rapidly. Problem? She asked. Entering territory previously forbidden, Guardian of Boundaries explained. Breaking ancient boundaries. Many will see as violation. Challenge leadership. You are saying your people might not follow your lead on this alliance? Some will resist, as will yours. The sentiment proved prophetic. At Checkpoint Delta, General Parker awaited them with not just a security team but what appeared to be a full combat squad, heavy weapons at the ready. As Reeves helped Guardian of Boundaries exit the vehicle, audible gasps and muttered curses filled the air. That's Major Becker's killer, one soldier said loudly, raising his rifle slightly. Took his head clean off during the Henderson's Ridge battle. Stand down, Parker ordered sharply, though her own hand rested on her sidearm. This is a parley, not an execution. Dr. Morley stepped forward, holding his tablet. General, I have decrypted more of Captain Frost's logs. The Artemis didn't just randomly encounter the harvesters. They were fleeing from Earth because the harvesters had already found our homeworld. This revelation sent a shock wave through the assembled humans. Earth, the almost mythical homeworld, many had never seen, potentially under attack by the same creatures threatening them now. If true, Parker said carefully, that would explain why no rescue mission ever came. Xerox seized the opening. General Parker, Commander Vereen has authorized me to offer Confederation assistance. Our vessel isn't a warship, but its technology could be adapted to strengthen your defenses. And what does the swarm bring to this proposed alliance? Parker asked, addressing Guardian of Boundaries directly for the first time. The swarm leader's appendages moved in complex patterns that the translator interpreted: knowledge of enemy. Biological weapons adapted to their physiology. Tunnels beneath mountains can move forces unseen. And in exchange? Survival, Guardian of Boundaries replied simply. For all. Parker looked between the unlikely delegation alien scientists, her own officers, and the creature humanity had called enemy for generations. Her expression revealed nothing, but the weight of command was evident in the set of her shoulders. Lieutenant Reeves, she finally said. Your assessment? Reeves straightened, surprised at being consulted. The harvesters are real, General. I have seen them. If even half of what Guardian claims is true, we are facing extinction without cooperation. Parker nodded once, decision made. Dr. Morley, set up a secure communications center here. Lieutenant, coordinate with our allies on tactical integration. She fixed Guardian of Boundaries with a steel gaze. Let me be perfectly clear. This is a provisional arrangement. One hint of betrayal, and we revert to 3 centuries of established policy. Understood? Perfectly, the swarm leader replied. Humans good at threats. Better at fighting. Together may be good enough. As the impromptu war council began forming around them, Xerox moved to Reeves' side. For beings that have been trying to exterminate each other for generations, that went surprisingly well. The day's young, Reeves replied dryly. Give us time, we might still kill each other before the harvesters get the chance. Above them, through gaps in the cloud cover, the stars were becoming visible as evening approached. Somewhere up there, the Harvester ship waited, and beyond that, countless worlds that knew nothing of the threat moving through the darkness between stars. "Well," Xerox said, his four eyes tracking the darkening sky, "at least things can't get any worse." As if in direct response, every communication device in the outpost suddenly blared with emergency alerts. Commander Varian's voice cut through the chaos. Multiple contacts detected. Harvester vessel deploying landing craft. Estimated time to ground assault, 30 minutes. The human settlement transformed into a war camp with breathtaking speed. Centuries of constant vigilance had hardened these colonists into a military machine that activated with practiced precision. Civilians moved to underground shelters while combat units deployed to predetermined positions along the defensive line. What made this mobilization different was the presence of their former enemies and new allies scattered throughout their ranks. "No, absolutely not," Lieutenant Reeves argued, pointing at the holographic battle map. "We can't position artillery units there. That ridge has been unstable since the earthquakes 3 years ago." Guardian of Boundaries' compound eyes glittered in the dim light of the command bunker. "Ridge appears solid in scans. Scans don't show the underground water channels our mining teams discovered," Reeves countered. "First barrage will collapse the whole formation." The swarm leader's appendages moved in what Reeves had begun to recognize as a gesture of concession. "Alternative position?" Reeves indicated another location on the map. "Here, higher elevation, solid bedrock, better firing angles." Nearby, Xerox and Dr. Morley worked feverishly to integrate Confederation scanning technology with the settlement's defensive systems. The Luminara remained in orbit, using its advanced sensors to track Harvester movements and relay them to ground forces. "If we reroute power from the eastern quadrant, we can boost the shield capacity by 30%, Xerox suggested, his tentacles flying over the controls. "The eastern quadrant has our hydroponics facilities," Dr. Morley objected. "We cut power there, we lose food production." "You won't need food if you are dead," Drax growled from where he was helping calibrate the weapons systems. The security chief had insisted on joining the ground team, claiming his combat experience would be more valuable than his presence on the Luminara. General Parker entered the command bunker, her weathered face showing no fatigue despite the crisis. Status report. "Harvester landing craft holding position just beyond our artillery range," Reeves replied. 12 vessels, each estimated to carry 20 to 30 combat units based on swarm intelligence. "Defensive perimeter?" "Established. We have incorporated Guardians warriors at key junctions. They have provided biological countermeasures against Harvester weapons, some kind of enzyme that neutralizes their energy signatures." Parker nodded, then turned to Xerox. "The modifications to our mech units?" "Complete," the alien scientist replied. "We have recalibrated them to target the specific frequency your sensors couldn't previously detect. The Harvesters use some form of partial phase shifting technology that made them appear as ghosts on your systems. That explains the phantom readings we have been getting for decades," Dr. Morley mused. "We always attributed them to equipment malfunctions." Guardian of Boundaries chittered something that the translator rendered as, "They hide. Always hide until ready to consume." A young communications officer approached the general. "Mom, Commander Vareen reports the Harvester mothership is deploying a second wave of landing craft. ETA 20 minutes. Parker's expression didn't change, but her voice hardened. "They are committing significant resources. They must consider this planet a priority target. Or they recognize the threat our alliance represents," Xerox suggested. 3 species cooperating against them, perhaps unprecedented. "Speaking of cooperation," Reeves interjected, "Guardians forces have completed the tunnel network connecting our southern flank with their forward positions. We can now move troops undetected across the entire defensive line." For the first time, a hint of satisfaction crossed Parker's face. "Good. Deploy reserve units through the tunnels. I want them in position but hidden until my command." As the command center hummed with activity, Xerox found himself momentarily at a loss. His scientific training hadn't prepared him for warfare on this scale. Observing the calm efficiency with which humans and swarm enemies for generations now worked together, he felt a new emotion he couldn't immediately classify. "Remarkable, isn't it?" Dr. Morley said quietly, noticing Xerox's contemplation. "It's 300 years of killing each other, and it takes an even bigger threat to make us see reason." "The Confederation has a saying," Xerox replied. "Understanding requires perspective. Sometimes one must step back to see the complete pattern." Outside, warning klaxons began to sound. The settlement's external lights dimmed to reduce visibility as combat units made final preparations. Through the command center's reinforced viewport, Xerox watched soldiers checking weapons, engineers securing defensive positions, and humans and swarm warriors communicating through hastily adapted translator devices. A strange calm descended in the minutes before battle, that universal moment of suspended animation before chaos erupts. In the command bunker, General Parker stood before the tactical display, studying it with the concentration of someone who had spent a lifetime preparing for this moment without knowing it. General, Guardian of Boundaries approached, its massive form moving with surprising grace. "Request permission to share battle blessing with human warriors." Parker raised an eyebrow. "Battle blessing. Tradition before combat. Increases neural synchronization. Improves reaction time." The general considered this, then nodded once. "Granted. But no funny business." As the swarm leader departed, Reeves moved to Parker's side. "You sure about this, General? Letting them interact directly with our troops?" "Nothing is sure anymore, Lieutenant," Parker replied, her eyes still fixed on the tactical display where red indicators multiplied as Harvester forces approached. "Except that in about 15 minutes, we are all going to find out what we are truly made of." The Harvesters struck at dawn. They came not in a disorganized rush but in methodical waves, each testing a different section of the defensive perimeter. Their forms were vaguely humanoid, but wrong in ways that triggered primal revulsion: limbs too long and jointed in too many places, torsos that rippled with internal movement beneath translucent skin, faces like blank masks with sensory organs arranged in unsettling patterns. "Hold positions." General Parker commanded from the central bunker, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding on tactical displays. "But let them commit to the approach vectors." Xerox watched in horrified fascination as the first Harvester units reached the outermost defensive line. They moved with disturbing coordination, some acting as living shields while others wielded energy weapons that melted through reinforced barricades like butter. "Perimeter breach in Sector 7. Called a communications officer." "As expected," Parker replied calmly. "Lieutenant Reeves, execute Maneuver Theta." On the battlefield, Reeves crouched behind a shattered wall, surrounded by a mixed unit of human soldiers and swarm warriors. At Parker's command, she signaled to her team, "All back to secondary positions." Controlled retreat. The defenders withdrew, appearing to abandon the breached sector. Harvester forces pursued, flowing through the gap directly into the trap. "Now," Reeves shouted into her comm. Hidden artillery positions on both flanks opened fire simultaneously. Not with traditional explosives, but with specialized shells developed overnight. Confederation scanning technology merged with swarm biological compounds and human delivery systems. The rounds detonated in airburst patterns, releasing a fine mist that clung to the Harvesters' partially phase-shifted forms, forcing them fully into material reality. "They are vulnerable," Guardian of Boundaries announced through the tactical net. "Strike now." From concealed bunkers, human mech units emerged, 12-foot armored exoskeletons piloted by the colony's most experienced warriors. What they lacked in Harvester technology, they made up for in brutal efficiency and the righteous fury of defenders protecting their home. The battle raged across multiple sectors, neither side gaining clear advantage. For every tactical success there came a setback. The Harvesters adapted quickly, developing countermeasures to the phase disruption weapons. The defenders responded with equally rapid adjustments, Xerox and Dr. Morley working frantically to modify their systems. 4 hours into the battle, a new threat emerged. Multiple signatures detected, Commander Vereen reported from the Luminara. The mothership is deploying some kind of massive ground unit. On the tactical display, a single large indicator moved slowly toward the settlement's eastern flank, the least defended section, due to the mountainous terrain thought impassable to conventional forces. "What are we looking at?" Parker demanded. "Unknown configuration," Vereen replied. "Mass suggests a capital-class combat unit." Guardian of Boundaries studied the readings, compound eyes reflecting the display's glow. Harvester Behemoth. World killer. Seen only once before. Destroyed our home planet. Silence fell over the command center as the implications sank in. "Can we stop it?" Parker asked finally. "Conventional weapons ineffective," Guardian of Boundaries replied. "Shields too strong." Xerox's tentacles worked rapidly over his console. "If we could disrupt its shields momentarily, a concentrated strike might penetrate its defenses." "The Luminara's primary drive system," Neary suggested suddenly. "If we modified the containment fields and created a controlled overload." "You are talking about sacrificing your ship," Reeves said, having returned to the command center after being wounded in combat. "To save this world?" "Yes." Vereen's voice was calm through the calm. "The question is how to deliver the payload precisely enough to matter." An unexpected voice spoke up from the corner of the bunker. Corporal Thomas Rivera, a young pilot who had been silently observing while awaiting orders, stepped forward. "I can do it," he said simply. All eyes turned to him. Rivera continued, "The old Dragonfly shuttles were designed for atmospheric mining operations. Manual controls, minimal electronic systems. The Harvester's energy disruption fields won't affect them as much." "A suicide mission," Parker stated flatly. "Not necessarily," Rivera countered. "If we calculate the approach vector correctly, I can release the payload and use the mountain updrafts to clear the blast radius." Parker studied the young pilot. "Probability of survival?" 17%. Dr. Morley calculated. "Give or take. Better odds than if that thing reaches our settlement," Rivera replied with a shrug. "Besides, my family is in Shelter 3. My parents, my sister and her kids. This isn't just about duty." Guardian of Boundaries moved closer, its massive form towering over the human pilot. "Courage. Respect." The translator couldn't fully capture the complex emotions in the clicking sounds. Parker nodded once, decision made. "Make the preparations." From his position in the auxiliary command post, Xerox watched the ancient mining shuttle rise shakily from its hangar. Hatched together with components from 3 different vehicles, its hull streaked with rust and carbon scoring, it looked like the least likely savior imaginable. "Payload secured," Rivera reported, his voice crackling through the comm. "Beginning approach run." The behemoth had reached the foothills now, its true form visible even from a distance. Like a mobile fortress, it crawled on multiple articulated legs, each the size of a building. Its central mass pulsed with the same violet energy as the mothership, shields shimmering around it. "Energy readings off the scale," Dr. Morley reported tensely. "If that thing reaches the settlement." "It won't," Rivera stated with quiet confidence. "Guardian, are your forces in position?" "Ready," came the reply. Swarm warriors had positioned themselves on surrounding ridges, armed with their most powerful biological weapons, essentially living missile launchers grown from their own genetic material. "Execute diversionary strike," Parker commanded. The swarm unleashed their weapons simultaneously, dozens of projectiles arcing toward the behemoth. They couldn't penetrate its shields, but they weren't meant to. The massive construct paused, redirecting energy to strengthen its forward defenses against the barrage. "Shields concentrating forward," Xerox observed. "Rivera, you will have a momentary weakness at its dorsal junction." "Copy that," the pilot responded. "Making my approach now." The mining shuttle dived from high altitude, its trajectory bringing it directly behind and above the behemoth. In its cargo bay, the modified drive core from the Luminara hummed with barely contained power, rigged to overload on impact. 10 seconds to release, Rivera announced, his voice remarkably steady. 9, 8. A sudden energy surge from the behemoth sent warning alarms blaring. "It's detected you," Neri shouted. "Redirecting shields, no time to adjust," Rivera replied calmly. "Going to Plan B." Before anyone could respond, the shuttle changed course, not pulling up to release its payload, but diving directly toward the momentary weak point in the behemoth's shields. "Rivera, abort," Parker ordered. "That's a direct impact trajectory." "Can't hear you, General," Rivera replied, though the transmission was perfectly clear. "Seems we are experiencing some comm interference. Tell my family I love them." The shuttle struck the behemoth precisely at the junction point where its shields were weakest. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then the modified drive core detonated. The explosion began as a pinprick of blinding light that rapidly expanded into a miniature sun. The behemoth's shields collapsed inward, its massive form buckling as the energy wave tore through its systems. Secondary explosions chained across its structure as power conduits overloaded. When the light faded and the thunder of the explosion rolled away into the mountains, all that remained of both the shuttle and the behemoth was a smoking crater. "They are retreating," Commander Vereen reported, 12 hours later. "The mothership has recalled all surviving ground forces and is breaking orbit." In the command bunker, the news was met not with celebration but with exhausted relief. Too many had fallen for victory to taste sweet. "Casualties?" Parker asked, her voice hoarse from hours of issuing orders. 243 humans, Dr. Morley reported solemnly. 176 swarm. And Corporal Rivera, guardian of boundaries, approached the general, its movements now slow and pained from its own combat wounds. "Rivera warrior's sacrifice, not forgotten, will be added to swarm memory songs." "He would have hated that," Reeves said with a sad smile, "being sung about by giant bugs. But he would have appreciated the gesture." Xerox studied the tactical displays showing the retreating harvester ship. "They will return, you know. Perhaps not soon, but eventually. This defeat will only delay them." "Then we will be ready," Parker replied firmly. "All of us." She looked meaningfully between the representatives of the three species that had fought together. "The Confederation will want to establish a permanent presence here," Vereen said through the comm link. "This system is now recognized as a strategic location in what appears to be an expanding conflict." "And the swarm?" Parker asked, turning to Guardian of Boundaries. The massive creature's appendages formed a gesture that needed no translation. 3 centuries as enemies. Perhaps 3 centuries as allies now. Later, as dawn broke on the day after the battle, Xerox stood on a hillside overlooking both the human settlement and the distant swarm territories. Reeves joined him, her arm in a makeshift sling. "You know what's strange?" she said quietly. "After all this time thinking they were monsters, it turns out the swarm are just people. Different, but people. The true monsters were waiting in the darkness between stars," Xerox replied. "As they still are." "Yet we beat them," Reeves said with a hint of pride. "This time, at least." Xerox's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he contemplated this. "When we first arrived, I thought we'd discovered a lost human colony preparing for war. I never imagined that we'd been fighting it all along," Reeves finished for him. "Without even knowing the real enemy?" Below them, human and swarm recovery teams worked side by side, clearing debris and tending to the wounded. Where once there had been only hatred born of misunderstanding, now grew the tentative roots of respect. "You humans," Xerox said finally, "are far more formidable than the Confederation ever gave you credit for. 300 years cut off from your homeworld, facing an enemy you didn't fully understand, and still you not only survived, you prevailed." Reeves smiled slightly. "Stick around, Xerox. You haven't seen anything yet." As the morning sun rose higher, its light fell equally on human settlement, swarm territory, and the waiting Confederation ship in orbit. 3 species united by the oldest motivation in the universe: survival against the darkness that threatened to consume them all. And somewhere in that darkness the harvesters retreated, wounded but not defeated, carrying with them the knowledge that in this small corner of the galaxy, They had found something unexpected. Resistance. Alliance.